If you've been going around the good old internet looking for the right podcast to fulfill your New York Yankees needs, well, I'll be the first to deliver the good news to you. You have found it. Here on Yapping Yankees with me, your host, Mike Scudero, you and I will be discussing the latest news, takes, and talk throughout the entire Yankee universe. Oh, and there may be some ranting on my behalf. Yeah. Anyway, what do you say we get to it? Let's get to yapping! Well, hello there, my fellow Yankee fans, and welcome to episode 217 of the Yapping Yankees podcast. As always, I am your host, Mike Scudero, here on April 21st, 2024. If you were asking yourself, does that intro seem shorter? Well, yeah, it does, because I decided to cut out the, where we yap about the Yanks and nothing but the Yanks, because, well, if you can't tell what we yap about here based off of the podcast title, then I don't really know what to tell you. And we've only been doing it for almost 5 years. And I do happen to touch on other things other than just the Yankees occasionally, so I figured after 217 episodes, why don't we just cap that for now? How's everybody doing today? Oh my goodness. It is May in about a week and a half. I just don't even know what to say anymore about how fast time goes, how incapable I am of having any concept of time whatsoever. But here we are on this cloudy, overcast Sunday. I am in a better mood today as opposed to last week, because last Sunday, the last time we spoke with each other, or we yapped together, the Yankees had come off a wild loss to end off that crazy series in Cleveland against the Guardians. Now today, fortunately, I can come to you in a better mood because the Yankees are coming off of a W today after taking yet another series against Tampa. Of course, they did lose their first series of the season earlier on in the week when they were in Toronto. Pretty ugly series there, even though it had an exciting end to it, but we'll talk all about the games and everything like that later on in the show, particularly in weekly recap, even today's game. But I did want to start off today's show on a different note, because even chronologically this is appropriate to start with this, because this happened very early on in the week, only the day after we last yapped. On Monday, that was the day that this happened. So Monday night, it was a nice relaxing night. It was a beautiful day here in New York on Monday 6 days ago. My God, it was gorgeous out. It was almost 80 degrees. It was sunny. Oh my God, it was so nice. I could literally feel the summer creeping up on me. And after work, I decided to go out to the Hamptons and spend a nice evening at the beach and then having dinner all by myself. And while I was at the beach, doing some studying too, because for those who don't know, I'm studying for the first of what'll probably be a couple of exams to get certified in the finance field. So I was doing some studying at the beach amidst it being an absolutely gorgeous night outside, enjoying some time to myself and all that good stuff. And not long before the game starts on Monday for the Yankees to play the Blue Jays, there is an announcement that hits the baseball community that a certain man has announced his retirement. And it did come a bit out of nowhere, but especially because of the circumstances and the reasoning, it's totally understandable. There are a lot of people, for some reason, out there just being completely rude about it and just being over-the-top baffled about it. By over-the-top, I mean just being obnoxious on social media and any sort of platform that they have, calling up the sports radio stations and just being rude about it for no reason, just not understanding it. Well, it's not your place to understand. It has nothing to do with you specifically. It's not your choice to make. But regardless, this legend happened to announce his retirement from the craft that he had dedicated himself to, that he had been uniquely and iconically skilled at, and just had an innate ability with. And the man that announced his retirement, his name is none other than Mr. John Sterling. The radio voice of the Yankees, of course, for the better part of the last 35 years. Since the late 1980s, 1989 to be specific. Now, for a lot of us, what John Sterling means is basically one of the first voices you think of, one of the first voices many of us think of, especially those of us born in the 90s or even later, up until now. One of the first voices we think of when we think of Yankees baseball, when we think of listening to a Yankee game, any Yankee game on the radio in the middle of the summer, maybe even in the fall, during the playoffs, during the World Series even, he's called 5 World Championships for the Yankees. 96, 98 through 2000, and of course 2009. I would have hoped that he was going to be able to call one more before retirement, but that is not in the cards. But just about any time you think of just turning on the radio, in the car, or just hanging out in the summer day when you're maybe spending time with your family, all listening to the Yankee game together, John Sterling is the voice you think of if you're a Yankee fan. He's the voice you often hear in highlight reels when you're watching highlights on MLB Network, or maybe even on Yes at times. You'll more than likely hear the TV crew on Yes, but even sometimes they'll give John Sterling's call. Or maybe if you're watching highlights on social media as well, many people will reference John Sterling and Susan Waldman on the radio. It's a voice that is synonymous with Yankees baseball and baseball in general. When you're around that long, I heard a lot of people talk about John in this light, and they are 100% correct. They just become a part of the fabric of the sport. And it couldn't be more true. Now, in the later years, not maliciously, obviously, but John Sterling did have his misplayed calls where he wouldn't see where the ball was going, or he just wouldn't see the play correctly, wouldn't call it correctly. And I joke around that, he'd say that there was a deep fly ball into left field. It is high, it is far, it is caught in front of the wall, and then I'd almost drive my car off the road. I made my jokes. Not maliciously, again, not at all. And of course, I know that not everybody's perfect, not even a legend like John. But it did also add to the fun of it. Because we obviously know the very unique way that he would call the home runs. And when they didn't turn out to be home runs, it ended up being pretty funny. Unless you were on the road and you literally almost drove off the road because you thought you were getting all excited for something that didn't turn out to be anything. I've had my times on the road with that. Because, of course, if you're on the road, I would hope that you're not watching the game, but you shouldn't be watching the game, and you really can't. So what you do is you listen to the game, any sport, on the radio, with the hopes that the broadcaster, the commentator, play-by-play, and or color could be your eyes that you otherwise cannot use because you're keeping them on the road. Again, hopefully. I hope that's what you're doing when you're on the road. And when that doesn't happen, makes you a little crazy sometimes. But obviously, John was one of a kind at broadcasting. He's had famous and unforgettable calls that you could talk about till the cows come home. Whether it be the way he called the home runs, it is high, it is far, it is gone, or maybe the specific home run calls for every single player for the better part of the last 20 to 25 years, starting with Bernie Williams' Burn Baby Burn that he just came up with on the fly. And then it just turned into a thing where he did it for every player, nearly. And anytime someone would ask him to do one for themselves, maybe, even if they weren't a player, he would always say, I don't think I'm smart enough to just do it on the whim with absolutely everybody, yet he did it anyway, so maybe he is that smart. And it's a credit to him. That's a lot of creativity that goes into that. It's not easy. Not every home run call really hit and was as good as some others, but the fact that he would take time out to do it for literally everybody, it's so impressive, and most of them were very good. Even the corny ones, only John could make them work, because he was part of that generation of broadcasting. He has that voice and persona on the air that cannot be replicated, it cannot be compared, and it just works with him. And nor should anybody try to replicate it. And that's even his own personal advice to guys like Justin Shackle, taking up the mantle after him. And Justin even said this himself on an interview with Meredith Marakovitz on the Yes Network when being asked about John Sterling. What was his advice to you? And John Sterling himself said this as well. He says that he just tells everybody to be themselves. And as someone who was in radio for a few years and came up through college doing radio work and still even doing this podcast now to keep my skills sharpened in this, I can say that that is probably the best advice you can give to any broadcaster out there. Because the first thing you think especially when you get a massive job, like taking over for someone like John Sterling, who just the shoes are just, you can't fill them. but you can be yourself. And his advice of being yourself is probably amongst the best. You go in there, you do the broadcast, and you just shoot from the hip like John himself said he did so often, especially with the home run calls for the specific players. And you figure out your style, and you just go about it from then on out. And that's when you get your big following, especially when you have as big of an exposure as you do when you're doing play-by-play for the New York Yankees on the radio every game. You figure out your style, and you go with it. Because the chances of being able to perfectly replicate someone else, it's probably not going to happen, nor should it happen, because we are all our own individual people. You might always be compared to the legend that had that position prior to you, and sometimes there's nothing you could do about that. That's just the nature of people and what they do, especially when the person before that was as much of an icon as John Sterling was at his craft. But all you can do is continue to stay true to yourself and be yourself, because it's important to remember that no matter how much we might want to mimic people, or we just idolize people, we may even start to do certain gestures like them and speak like them. That's okay to do here and there. Obviously, people have done that since the beginning of human time. But it is important to also primarily, first and foremost, be yourself. And that's what John preaches to all of his fellow broadcasters, especially the younger ones, maybe even the ones taking over for him, at least somewhat of a part-time basis, like Justin Shackle, who I absolutely adore, by the way. I love Justin. I think he's great. I love Ryan Rucco. These are terrific, young, talented broadcasters who deserve opportunities like this. So, John retiring is definitely, as the episode title says, without a doubt, is the end of an era. That is a class of broadcasters that are definitely on their way out, if not totally out already. And like I said before, they cannot nor should they ever be replicated. Ever. John started on the radio back in 1960. Did some shows on WFAN a long time ago. Commentated some basketball games and came over to the Yankees to broadcast with them since 1989. He has been in the industry ultimately for 64 years. It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible to have any sort of a career for that long, let alone broadcasting. It's amazing. Think of how many years you are in the public eye for. Think of how many years your voice is what makes you your living, even amidst all the excitement. I mean, as good as some people tell me my voice is, the second I get excited about something, if I scream for a few seconds straight, it's already a little raspy. And I know that happens with most, but still, it's tough to sustain your voice for that long. Nonetheless, what happens to some people naturally when they age? Some people, especially men in particular, I mean, this happens to everybody, but especially with men, even in the broadcasting field, some of them just happen to, when they get older, they start to lose that bass of their voice that makes their voice as pleasant to listen to as it always was. John never lost it. His voice sounds as terrific now as it did 20 years ago. And that's very special considering the man is going to be 86 years old in July. It's pretty amazing, truly. It really, really is. John really has had one of the better broadcasting voices I've ever heard since I got into sports. Baseball obviously being my first one back in around 2007. And to this day, even if he wasn't necessarily as sharp as he was 20 years ago, for obvious reasons, the man's getting older, it's natural, his voice is one thing that has never, ever lost its bass, lost its effect coming over the airwaves. And while his broadcasting and keeping up with the game makes his mistakes here and there, especially as he gets older, again, it's only natural, John is truly one of a kind. Really was. Stellar broadcasting for decades. Did Yankeeography on the S Network, which is also one of my favorite things to watch. Love watching Yankeeography with John's iconic narrating voice in the background. Did a lot of things, accomplished a lot of great things, had a career that has spanned a surreal amount of time. Think about it for a second. 64 4 years. Plenty of the time, that's more than some people live a life. And he spent that long being a broadcaster. Again, doing a number of different things. Not even just the Yankees, but most iconically and most recognizably the Yankees, of course. Being dubbed the voice of the New York Yankees by his broadcasting partner and the organization at large, deservedly so. And the most important thing to me as well, even amidst all of these accolades, well-deserved, he's as humble as they come. And I appreciate that more so than anything. You even hear the way that he spoke in the press conference. You hear the way that he spoke on the field during his ceremony yesterday afternoon. The man is as down-to-earth as they come. He just viewed this as a way to support his family, make money, pay the bills. And he never thought that he'd be able to be recognized and be celebrated like this, ultimately, for just doing something that was making him a living, and he was doing to make a living. And he thinks that how lucky he is in order to be able to say that, and he is. And the fact that he recognizes that and he is so appreciative of that shows his humility. And I really give people credit who, despite all these years, being as remarkable as someone like John has been, I really admire when someone like him especially still manages to stay grounded. They're humble. They don't think themselves to be better than anybody else. Because at the end of the day, that's another thing to remember. I even always say it on the show about myself, like, who the hell am I? We are all still people at the end of the day. We get up in the morning, we put our clothes on, get ready for our day. We eat, we sleep. We're all people. It's important that no matter how big you get, you remember that. It's really important. Not many people do when they achieve the levels of fame and recognition that John did. Some do. Not nearly all of them do. John is one of them that does, and that is what always makes him stick out to me as far as one of my favorite celebrities out there, who were also as good as they were at their craft as John was, and as dedicated as he was. The amount of games he did, over 5,500 to 5,600 broadcasts of Yankee games. They were even talking about it. You want to talk about Lou Gehrig's consecutive game streak, Cal Ripken Jr.'s consecutive game streak. How about John's radio streak? A total of 5,631 games. It's truly unbelievable. And through it all, the man stays humble. I actually prepared a clip because I really, really liked his on-the-field speech during yesterday's ceremony. I heard some people here and there saying that they expected something more. They expect him to get emotional, and John is an emotional guy. I was kind of surprised myself that he managed to hold it together throughout all the festivities and his interviews and everything, but he managed to, and more credit to him. But I happen to like how short, sweet, to the point, and matter of fact and sweet his speech was on the field yesterday, and I wanted to play it on the show here. It's not that long, but this is John Sterling from the Yes Network. Audio credit to them, of course. This was John Sterling on the field when he was being celebrated before yesterday afternoon's game against the Rays in the early afternoon yesterday at Yankee Stadium for his ceremony. And now I'm even going to turn on my radio side even more. Take a listen to Mr. John Sterling.
You know, in my mind, I had carved out a little bit of a speech, which we don't need anymore. Obviously, I have to thank the Steinbrenner family. I have to thank Michael Kay, my partner for 10 years. We had a really good partnership. And the last 20 years, with the greatest partner in the world, Susan Waldman. But what I really want to do is to thank you, and I'll tell you why. I've been here as the Yankees 36 years, and in that time, person after person, group after group, have come to me with kindness, respect, and love. And how lucky can you be for people to celebrate what you do for a living? You know, I had to bring these people up, and I had to make money to do it. So The fans have been phenomenal to me over the past 36 years. So, from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much, and God bless you all.
I mean, you tell me. Could it be more down to earth and humble and more matter of fact than that? Even turning to his family and saying, I had to bring these people up. I had to pay the bills, and this was my living, and how lucky am I to be able to be celebrated for it and celebrated with all of you, the fans. I mean, it's genuine, and that's refreshing in today's world because there's not too much of that, especially in the day and age of the internet. So that's why something as simple as that, and you may think I'm silly for saying it, and that's fine, whatever, but something as simple as that to me is just a breath of fresh air, and it comes from a generation that is going all too soon for my liking. But that's why you cling on to it when you get your John Sterlings, because there aren't too many of them left. There are some in this generation. There are some in every generation. But you feel more and more, or at least I do, you feel more and more that they come fewer and further between, unfortunately. So just having John Sterling celebrated like this was awesome. Seeing him was awesome. Hearing him talk was great. Even his press conference, like starting out with something really, really funny and lighthearted. Getting people to laugh right away in the media. When he sat down at the press conference table that usually Aaron Boone addresses the media at for home games. Sat down and goes, is this usually where Booney says that he's getting close? And the entire media, they were all laughing because it's kind of true. But anyway, it's just charisma that it's unlike much of anybody else. But, I mean, it was just quite simple for him as far as how he saw it. I mean, here's another clip of him talking about how long his career spanned and just what it was for him.
My first day on the air, really big. Whoa, was that big. To finally get a job and be able to support myself. My first day on the air was February 1st, 1960. Now, since no one in this room was born then, that's how long I've been on the air. So that's 64 years. And you know what? I'm really tired. So I'm looking forward to not being on the air, which will start tomorrow.
I appreciate the honesty, man. I mean, yeah, and there were people, again, the spanning of his career just incredible, but to the people even just baffled as to why he waited until now to do it as opposed to maybe during the offseason or maybe just before the season started or maybe even during spring training, just before the regular season started. Listen, it's not up to us to decide when it's time, truly time, for someone else to retire. It's up to the person. And there's some people talking about that he was saying that he felt this during the offseason, maybe towards the later part of last year even, and thinking about it a lot, throwing around the idea, and he just decided that now is the right time. I mean, what are you going to do? It's pretty cool that he got to end off his last home run call on Giancarlo Stanton's grand slam. And that's pretty cool to be able to end off on your last home run call on that. Talk about a big bang to end off on. But from burn baby burn to non si posto parlo on a grand slam. Oh my gosh. All in all, though, guys, even if he happens to not necessarily be your favorite, you can't deny the mark that this man left on the sport of baseball, let alone the field of broadcasting in general, sports broadcasting. And regardless of whether or not he sees it this way, John is definitely someone who does not come around often. And when he does, you just grab on tight and don't let go for as long as possible, because having someone like him around is truly special. Whether it comes to how he was in his craft or how he is as a person. Just genuine, down to earth, kind. Special qualities in a person that may sometimes be taken advantage of or taken for granted or overlooked even. He has all of them, and you got to appreciate them when they come around. And as far as not hearing his voice on the air anymore, when I'm in the car, when I'm with family, when I'm just listening on the radio in general to a Yankee game, it's going to be weird. It's going to be weird because for a lot of us, it's all we've known for much of our lives or maybe even all of our lives. as a Yankee fan. I mean, he even said in that clip before, first day on the air, February 1st, 1960. Basically, nobody in that media room was probably even born as of yet. Maybe someone in there was, but hardly anybody. I was long from being born. That was about 37 years before my birth. And I've only ever known John Sterling on the radio with the Yankees since I became a fan around the time of 2007-ish. So John's all I've known on the radio. I'm sure whoever comes after will be fine. Justin Shackle's already doing a fantastic job, and anybody else who's to fill in. And, of course, Susan will keep doing her thing as the color commentator. So it's just going to be weird, though, man. It'll be really, really weird. It always is when someone who's around for a very long time is just not around anymore doing their job and filling that role, being your eyes and hearing that voice on the radio every day. It's going to be weird, that's for sure. But nonetheless, to state the obvious, John Sterling, congratulations on a long, fantastic broadcasting career. And we Yankee fans are going to miss you. That's for sure. So he announced that this past Monday. And here we are 6 days later in the post-John Sterling era, especially after his ceremony yesterday came and went. It was very nice. And as it always does, guys, life moves on. And I guess now that we're almost a half an hour into the show already, we should do the same thing with the show. So, John Sterling again, once more, the utmost of congratulations to a legend. It is truly the end of an era, especially for Yankees radio broadcasting. And we'll just see how it goes from here. Speaking of how it goes, how it's been going for the Yankees this past week, it has been an interesting week, to say the least. It's been a bit of a mixed bag. Some good to talk about, some bad to talk about. And it's definitely looked a bit different since that whacked-out loss in Cleveland. I found myself asking myself many times throughout the week, all the way up until I just started recording today, did Sunday screw them up? I don't know. I just felt like a loss like that, especially when, even if the series prior to that had went well, like last Saturday was awesome, sweeping the doubleheader, and then they were about to win epically in extra innings in the third and final game, but then, you know, you end a series the way the Yankees ended that one, and that could really just leave a bad taste in your mouth as you go and move on to your next series, and it could stick with you for a little bit, maybe even, despite how good the series may have even been prior to that really heartbreaking loss. And it was very unnecessary because a lot of what happened in the bottom half of that inning when the Guardians walked them off was self-inflicted on the Yankees' behalf. And I was just wondering, man, did that loss really just stick with them and they took that with them to Toronto? Because the Toronto series was what it was. And it was kind of the inverse in Toronto, because the first two games were pretty freaking bad. And then the third game, they epically came back and won. And they lost the series, their first series loss of 2024. So it's kind of the inverse of the Guardian series. Just two tougher games to start off the series. And then the last one was won epically. Even though he lost the series, it ended off on a good note. Again, the inverse of the Guardian series. So, very odd. And then fortunately after today, which is definitely a positive note as they managed to snag another series, this one against the Tampa Bay Rays in Yankee Stadium, returned home this weekend to face Tampa. They've returned to their winning ways, their series winning ways, and were able to finish off on a positive note yet again after this afternoon's game. And amidst it all, there's definitely been a lot to talk about, which we will definitely hit on even in more detail throughout weekly recap as usual, but you have certain bullpen dramas here and there. The starting rotation is actually, for the most part, done quite a nice job, which runs completely counter to what I expected. Maybe it's just a matter of time until it goes back to the way that I expected. There have been, of course, days where it hasn't been so great, but that's going to happen. I thought it was going to be a problem damn near every day, but they've actually held up quite nicely for the most part. And definitely certain talking points to discuss throughout the Yankee lineup. And this was really the area that I was thinking maybe it got to their heads, that Guardians game on Sunday, and maybe they just haven't been right this week. Maybe it's just finally time for them to hit a slump. I mean, we are nearly 4 weeks into the season, and they had started off so freaking hot for so long, and they're bound to regress to the mean at least a little bit eventually. Maybe this past week was that just happening, because they'd only had a couple of games prior to that when that did happen, where the offense went quiet. It's really been mainly more so a theme of this past week, even though they still managed to snag the series against Tampa this weekend, fortunately. But up and down the lineup, there's definitely been a lot of talking points. Many of them are not good, but there are definitely some points of goodness. First off, I guess we could start with our leadoff hitter, Anthony Volpe. And we'll talk about this more as the show goes on, of course. But Mr. Volpe, last week or so, obviously we know how he started the season, and then all the controversy that we spoke about last week. Some people were not okay with him moving to the leadoff spot, and now we're here a week later. And we all saw the clip that Anthony was hitting at. He was hitting at a ridiculous clip, nearly a 400 batting average, just up until about last week or so, hitting in the 370s, even the 380s, weeks after the season began. So it wasn't just a few days thing. It was way beyond that. Now, of course, we know, and I even said this at one point, it really doesn't take a rocket scientist to know this. All you really have to have under your belt is just slight experience having watched baseball at all. But it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that the numbers that he was putting up were not sustainable over the course of 162 games. So I think all of us knew that at one point or another, Anthony Volpe was going to hit a time where he, let's say, regressed to the mean. Or you could just come out and say it, slumped. He has very much done that this last week. So you'll have to forgive me if I'm not as upset as you were maybe hoping to find me when it comes to how much Anthony Volpe has slumped. I mean, his average is even down to, it's so terrible, 288. Oh my God, what a nightmare. But even as terrible, it shows how amazing he was doing before. Even as terrible as he has been for the last 7 days or so, his average is still basically 290. I mean, in his last 25 to 30 at-bats, he only has 2 hits. He's slumping pretty bad now. But again, we knew that sustaining what he was doing before was simply not going to be possible for anyone. So we knew that at some point he was going to slump and it was going to come back down. Now, at some point, because he has been slumping, at some point it's going to go the other way again. He will get hot again, and the numbers will go back up. So I'm not worried. We saw that when he made the changes that he did, we saw his potential, so we know it's there now. It's just a matter of him figuring this slump out and getting hot again. But the thing that I noticed, especially in today's game, he had 2 strikeouts in today's game. He went 0 for 5, did not reach base at all, except on a fielder's choice. But via walk, hit, anything else of that stature, where it would benefit your numbers at all, he did not reach base. One thing I did notice on one of the strikeouts is that, unfortunately, and this has been the theme really lately for him, it makes sense as to why his slump is happening, I realized that his long sort of uppercut swing has unfortunately returned. That swing that we saw bring about much misfortune for him and many strikeouts in his rookie season last year. It has somewhat returned. So all he's got to do, he doesn't seem to be seeing the ball very well right now either, and his timing is definitely off. So with Volpe, it's just a matter of, getting that swing back, getting that leveled, balanced swing back and getting the timing back, and then he'll heat up again. We know that swing is there, but he's just got to retrieve that bat-to-ball approach, flat, leveled swing that he had when he was just tearing the cover off the ball no matter who he faced. Because it seems like some of the bad habits he was getting into mechanically at the plate with his swing, those 2023 mechanics have somewhat returned amidst this slump. So he'll figure it out. Not worried. Juan Soto, still Juan Soto, doing incredible things. On-base percentage at a clip of .456 right now. So basically 46% of the time in all of his plate appearances, he is at least reaching base. The batting average is still hovering around 340. The OPS is 1,034. He is still amazing. He is averaging nearly an RBI per game. Just incredible stuff out of him. Next, and this is the biggest point of contention throughout the entire fan base, having everybody flipping the hell out, our captain, Mr. Aaron Judge. Now, today he had started out the game at the start of it with his first strikeout. That was his 6th strikeout in a row at bat-wise. He has not looked good. This entire past week, with today's hit included, he only had 3 hits the entire week, starting from Monday to now. He is not seeing the ball. His timing is off, to say the least. And I say he's not seeing the ball because literally yesterday he had at-bats where at some points nearly every pitch was in the dirt. He was swinging at nearly all of them. His older self, where he really got fooled by low and away breaking balls, sliders in particular, had very much returned. His swings are ugly, and the timing is just definitely off. The hips are flying open. The leveling of the swing isn't quite the same. The timing is still whacked out. I mean, by the time we spoke last week, he at least had it on his side that he was still walking and getting on base. His on-base percentage was still really solid. But he stopped doing even that this past week, and the strikeouts have been very ugly. And I say he's not seeing the ball because the pitches he's swinging at are just downright terrible the vast majority of the time. And the pitches that he is getting, he's gotten quite a few fastballs, very hittable, very favorable, getting a lot of plate. And he's even had some breaking balls that he has spoiled that he normally crushes. And he himself is the first to mention that he usually doesn't get too many pitches to hit in general, but even the ones that he's not getting to them. Everything's off right now, and it's very easy to tell that. Anyone who has even an iota of a clue about baseball can see that. The numbers are not good right now. 183 batting average. He has his 3 home runs and 11 RBIs, but his OPS sitting at 674. Thanks to an on-base percentage of just 320 now. It's dropping fast. And a slugging of 354. Has 17 walks still, but those have decreased as of this last week. The strikeouts are up. It's not looking too great here. Now, am I calling it quits? Am I throwing in the towel? Am I completely freaked out about it? The answer to all those questions is no. But do I hate to watch it, and am I getting real tired of it real fast? Hell yes. I don't know how else to really say it. Aaron Judge is obviously my favorite player. Everyone knows that. If you know me for even a little while, you probably know that already. But because he is my favorite player, I also have less of a tolerance to see him struggling the way he has. And the fact of the matter is, I can love Judge as much as I love him and still come to terms with the fact, and I've just something I've noticed, he has seldom ever looked worse than he has to start this year. He's had his moments, he's had his games here and there, like the game in Arizona. We had those couple of big hits. He had a big home run and then the big double. And he's had a couple of huge home runs as well. And, I mean, the huge go-ahead 2-run single in Toronto even just this past week. So he's had his moments here and there, but they're very sporadic. They're usually far apart from each other. And on the whole, he is really having a tough time. Yeah, generally doesn't get too many pitches to hit, but the ones he is getting, and there have been a decent amount, especially the last few days, he's just not getting them. He's not taking advantage, and he looks terrible out there. I still think he's going to be fine. A lot of people out there are speculating, of course. A lot of people think he's injured. A lot of people think that just something's off. I even had one person tell me that they think he's out of his prime already. He's 31 years old. Like, let's not go that far in. But he's just not looking good, regardless of the reason. And it does need to be figured out sooner or later because the Yankees need their captain to be coming through here. Now, the unbelievable part is that, like I said last week, it was one thing that I mentioned. The Yankees are now still currently sitting at a 15-7 record. And this is without Judge really still finding his stride nearly at all. And that's pretty amazing when you think about it. But at some point, the Yankees are going to need their captain to figure it out. Because the Juan Sotos and Oswaldo Cabreras and all the people responsible for much of their offense, They're going to go through their tough times too. And when that happens, when certain other guys slump, certain others have to pick them up. And Aaron Judge is expected to be a leader, if not the leader of this team, especially as the captain now. So eventually they're going to need Aaron Judge to figure it out. I am nowhere near giving up on the guy yet. It's going to take an awful lot for me to do that. An awful lot. And I'm not completely worried yet. I still think he will figure it out, but I'd be remiss if I acted like I'm completely fine with what I'm seeing, because I'm not. I think that he has seldom ever looked worse, if ever, and he does have to figure it out at some point. It is going to be May in about a week and a half. I'd like for him to start getting going pretty soon. Got to get going. Stanton, he's slowed down a little bit as well, but he is taking his walks, especially today. He's getting on base when he can, but, I mean, for the most part, he could be doing better. He does have a good amount of home runs on the year so far. In 66 at-bats, he's got 5 home runs. So if you multiply that to where you get to about 500 at-bats, it is a very good amount of home runs. Knock on wood, still healthy, of course. But would like to still see a little bit better out of him, but he's doing his thing, I guess. Anthony Rizzo, yes, he did have that RBI single earlier in today's game, responsible for the first run. Otherwise, I got to be honest with you, I think almost no one out there looks worse than Anthony Rizzo to start this year. He looks terrible. He is a pop-ups machine. Defensively, it has been a nightmare. I even mentioned it last week, that how weird it is to start this year. One problem that has never existed for Anthony Rizzo has been his defense. This year, it has been a massive, massive problem. He has made mistakes that he would never make, and frequently, at first base to start 2024. Bafflingly so. No clue why or how it's even happening. I'm not even sure Rizzo knows. Could it be the fact that he's just finally regressing? He's aging? Is he washed? I don't know. But so far, I very much do not like what I'm seeing of Anthony Rizzo. It was encouraging, the RBI single today. It was a very solid hit. Fortunately, just didn't pop one up for once. But the plate discipline is not what it was. The defense is not nearly what it ever was. And even his power seems slightly diminished. His timing seems to be off. Just not liking what I'm seeing from him. I'm not. I'm hoping he heats up at some point, but things are not going the way that I expected with Rizzo at all. Glaber, maybe really nervous today with that foul ball off his leg. Looked really bad. Couldn't even get up for a while, but he got up and got a hit afterwards. But for the most part, his struggles are continuing. Defense is still not there, and the offense is not there yet either at all. So, trying to be patient with Glaber as well, but it's still early. Just try to keep reminding myself of that. But Glaber, still not liking what I'm seeing on the whole from him. But one thing I will say is that one hit he did have today, especially even after fouling that ball off his leg, it was to the other side of the field. It was to right field. When he hits the opposite way, that's a good sign for Glaber Torres. So I'm going to be patient and see what he does this coming week. Alex Verdugo had a very nice game today, 3 for 4. Had a go-ahead 2-run single in today's game at one point. Average up to 260 now. So he's had his good games, really good games, clutch moments, and he's had his games where he does little to nothing, and this is really where it is for the mean on average. So for the most part, I'd say he's fine. He's done a very fine job in left field defensively. So on the whole, I would say for the most part, I'm fine with what he's done here. I'm fine with it. And the energy he brings is awesome, I'll say that, which is very important. Jose Trevino, right now he's obviously looking like the better of the catchers between he and Wells, even though Wells is definitely getting a lot of inconsistent playing time. And even though Wells' numbers are undeniably brutal offensively, everyone's mentioned this and it's true. He has hit into a lot of bad luck. He's hit a lot of balls hard right at people. I will say that, but the numbers are still terrible. Both can be true. So the results just have not been there for Wells. The defense from both of them has not been great, to be honest. Especially, it's been less so with Trevino, and even more so today, particularly with his arm. Can someone please answer to me what in the hell happened to Jose Trevino's arm strength? He couldn't throw out a turtle running to second base right now. Every throw is like 70 miles an hour. It takes multiple seconds for the throw to even arrive at second base. And when it gets there, many of them are on the shortstop side of the bag. Just terrible, completely non-competitive throws. It's basically giving away a free stolen base to anyone who wants to try on him. His arm strength is gone. Cooked. I'm just wondering what the hell happened to it. Because Trevino used to be pretty decent at throwing out runners. His arm strength was definitely at least a little better before. You can't tell me it wasn't. So I'm just very baffled on that. And you had the catcher's interference today as well. It's just really odd, but we know that as of last week, his offense had really picked up. It's continued to do that for the most part. He's still come through here and there. He came through with a nice RBI single in today's game as well, went 1 for 4. Of the tandem, he's definitely the better of the two right now. But, he'll do his thing every now and again on offense. He's not known for that, with the exception of his 2022 outlier season, as we know. But the catching position's been weird this year, man. Weird. Waldo, last but certainly not least, one of the catalysts of the entire offense throughout the entire young season so far. He has continued to be that. Another big RBI single earlier today, 2 for 4, average still over 300. What a gift he has been. So like I said, mixed bag. Losing the series in Toronto, winning against Tampa with all the AL East opponent matchups. Action this past week. Wow, what a sentence that was. Wow. And even with the bats, mix of good and bad. Mixed bag in a lot of areas. So, very interesting past week that we had. So, definitely a lot of controversy surrounding the bats, and we'll continue to talk about that as the show continues to progress. For now, why don't we move on to Yankees news? What has happened this past week? Aside from the obvious John Sterling news, which of course we've already hit on here. As far as injuries, roster, any sort of injury updates, as of people who are on the injured list, maybe there's an update on when they may return. We start with Tuesday, the 16th, more roster news. Josh Maciejewski, we of course remember that as of last week's episode, they had DFA'd him. Well, nobody had taken him, so he was outrighted off the Major League roster and down to AAA once again. So Maciejewski is down in the minors off of the 40-man. On Thursday the 18th, the Yankees had actually made another waiver claim, which as we know is a big theme of the offseason, especially towards the latter part of it. Well, even as the season has begun, they made yet another waiver claim, and this move was a bit of a head-scratcher. But the Yankees had claimed outfielder Taylor Trammell off waivers from the Los Angeles Dodgers. 26 years old. He used to be a top 10 prospect in the Mariners system. That's primarily where we've seen him. But to his 121-game young career so far, it hasn't been a great start. He has shown signs of power, but otherwise, slash line, 165, 266, and 361. Batting average, on base, and slugging in that order. So over the course of all those games, even though he's shown flashes of potential and the power is there, just overall not good. But we'll see what happens with a change of scenery, I guess. We saw him very briefly this weekend. But we'll see if he gets even much more playing time beyond that. And to make room on the 40-man, the Yankees had designated utility infielder Kevin Smith for assignment. So Kevin Smith was DFA'd as well. So the reason it was a head-scratcher to me was because it was a bit odd to me that they had sacrificed further infield depth at this time, in particular, to make room for another outfielder on the 40-man, even though the Yankees have much better outfield depth than they do infield depth, especially with multiple infield injuries as of right now, with Oswald Peraza, DJ LeMahieu, even recently John Birdie, who they had just acquired from the Marlins. Even he is hurt of recently. And now you were sacrificing more infield depth for a depth outfielder. So just really weird there, honestly. But all right then. And Kevin Smith, by the way, was also outrighted to AAA as of recently, off of the 40-man since he was not claimed as well after his DFAing. So he's still in the Yankee system, just not on the 40-man. Also to go along with those things that same day, unfortunately, more injury news. Boy, the sun must be rising in the east and setting in the west tomorrow. Who saw that one coming? But the Yankees had also placed Nick Birdy on the 15-day injured list, retroactive to the 17th with right hip inflammation. So more bullpen injuries. Whoop-de-freaking-do, am I right? So Nick Birdie, another one, down in the bullpen. Solid arm out there. I mean, there would be times where he lost a little bit of control as well, but hard-throwing, right-handed quality pitcher out there that was an unexpected surprise after being a non-roster invitee in spring training, of course, and now on the injured list along with the rest of the arms. So there's that. The Yankees had recalled Cody Morris to cover for him. So more bullpen injuries to a bullpen that really can no longer afford to have many more of them. And this news with Birdie and Cody Morris went hand in hand with the addition of Trammell to the Major League roster, of course. As far as any other injuries that you may be wondering about that you haven't gotten an update about already, of guys that may be somewhat close to returning, well, you have Tommy Kahnle, speaking of bullpen help. He tossed from a bullpen mound again a couple of days ago on the 19th in Tampa, but Boone said that he needs one more session like this before he even faces hitters in a live hitting situation. They've been in touch with him, and he's feeling pretty good about where he's at physically right now, so that's pretty good, but the slow buildup of Kahnle seems to still be ongoing. There's really no definitive time as to when he could be back. Basically, right now, they're saying possibly throughout the month of May. That doesn't really help. Peraza is continuing his throwing program, Oswald Peraza, and he's been hitting at the Yankees complex in Tampa as well, but he's still at least a couple of weeks away from any minor league games, rehab assignment-wise, so he's still a bit off, and then everybody else are basically caught up on as of late. Garrett Cole had a slight update. He increases throwing to 90 feet. So he's progressing slowly but surely, and he's feeling great all throughout each further step that he's taking. So hopefully continuing on with good news for Cole, who still hopes to return within the next month to a month and a half. We'll see. Everybody else is pushed off to at least the summertime or next year. And Jason Dominguez, obviously, is still just working his way back. And as of Friday the 19th, a couple of days ago, Aaron Boone had said that the Yankees were targeting Tuesday, so just in 2 days, for DJ LeMahieu to begin his minor league rehab assignment. And he was supposed to start a couple of days ago, as we know. I had even mentioned that the Yankees were talking about, I'd mentioned it on last Sunday's episode, that they were talking about him potentially starting a rehab assignment as soon as after the Toronto series ended. But it turned out that he had gone for tests, and his tests had revealed that there was a little bit of a lack of healing with his injury, which was not news that the Yankees or DJ LeMahieu himself, of course, wanted to hear whatsoever. And DJ just looked miserable in the dugout whenever they showed him. You have to imagine that his rehab assignment being pushed back was the last thing he wanted to hear. I mean, bro has a lot to prove again when he comes back off this injury, that he can keep his feet under him, quite literally, and prove that he is not just a declining, aging, injury-prone player since he signed his contract here. So, I mean, especially with all the struggles going on in the lineup here and there and all the controversies going on in the infield, and we even briefly touched on it in last week's episode, what should they do with DJ? Should they actually sit Oswaldo, who has been a main source of offense for the team throughout the entire young season so far? Should they take at-bats away from Glaber? Should they take at-bats away from Anthony Rizzo, since DJ can also play some first base? The Yankees have taken an approach that they will just cross that bridge when they get to it. Sounds to me like they're leaning more towards Oswaldo and thinking about that, which is just pure lunacy as far as I'm concerned, so long as Oswaldo keeps on hitting at the clip that he is. But it's tough because Glaber still looks, for the most part, really bad. Rizzo looks really bad. And these are guys you could probably afford to rotate here and there rather than Oswaldo if he keeps on hitting this way. But then, of course, Oswaldo is the youngest and least experienced of the three in this equation. You're obviously not going to be putting Volpe anywhere, and DJ doesn't usually play shortstop anyway, so that's not a problem. But, like, what do you do here? Like, has DJ even really earned the right to just snag a position from anybody with what he has done, or I guess hasn't done, for the vast majority of the last 2 to 3 years? It's a tough decision. And again, it is a positive problem to have, but it is a problem nonetheless. It's a little bit of a logjam again. And the Yankees have been experienced with this issue for a few years now in certain areas. So, that's the question. What do you really do? It's tough. But he's still going to be a ways off because of how much time he's missed. He's probably going to need quite a bit of time for his rehab assignment to get into game shape again and get his timing down so he can make any sort of an impact whatsoever upon his return to the Yankees. So again, it's not really a problem that any of us have to specifically worry about as of yet, especially if DJ needs a lot of time in his rehab assignment. But it's something to think about. But it seems like Tuesday is the official date for him to get going with his rehab assignment, so that was the news there. So, more or less, that's the latest on injuries. And as far as major news to report overall as well, that is just about it. And I'm just itching to talk about more of the action that took place this past week in this mixed bag of events since the last time we spoke all the way up to today. So what do you say we just waste no more time at all and just flow right into the weekly recap segment? Yapping Yankees Time Machine. Let's do it. All right, starting with the Toronto series that I've been talking so much about. We start with Monday, the 15th, which, of course, was also the day that John Sterling announced his retirement. You had Luis Gil on the mound taking on Chris Bassett. Now, the Yankee offense did very little in this game, and by very little, I mean literally only one thing as far as scoring. In the top of the second, Oswaldo Cabrera had driven home a run on an RBI single, driving home Glaber. And that was the only run that the offense scored on the entire night, only having 4 hits total, that one by Oswaldo, a hit by Verdugo, Glaber, and Volpe as well. And as far as the pitching actually held up quite nicely, but the offense just could not get anything going. That was the main story. And this was really one of very few times before this past week that the offense had done that, as we know, because for the vast majority of the time prior to this, the offense had really done a fantastic job at showing great fight, doing what needed to be done as long as it got a win. But this past week, like I said, that has run a bit more stagnant than usual. And that was the main problem with this game. But the main thing was Luis Gil as well. Now, this was a very interesting start by him. And his line will tell the story why. Because he had 5 innings, 3 hits, 3 runs, 7 walks, and 6 strikeouts. Obviously, the main story being those 7 walks. Now, what was the main thing that we always talk about that Luis Gil always has the most trouble doing? It's staying in control. Because when he loses control, and this was the deal as well before even his Tommy John surgery, when he loses control, he is his own worst enemy. And he puts himself into a lot more trouble than is necessary. He makes himself work a lot harder than is necessary. And this was another example of that kind of outing. Now, it was a straight-up miracle that amidst 7 walks and striking out 6 at the same time, just those 2 things alone should tell you that his pitch count was through the roof. And he found himself in a lot of jams as a result of all this, because 7 walks, 3 hits, there were a lot of base runners, lots of traffic on the bases against Luis Gil. And yet he still kept them to only 3 runs. Some innings were no less than a miracle when Gil kept them to low scoring because things got really bad at certain times. But the fact that he still managed to hold them to 3 runs, keep them in the game within 2 runs, and still also managed to go 5 innings, because there were certain points of this start in the 2nd inning, in the 3rd inning, that early on, that I didn't even think he was going to make it out of those respective innings. And he still managed to actually give 5 innings. And Marinaccio pitched 2 scoreless innings shockingly after he was done, and Dennis Santana even pitched a scoreless frame in the bottom of the 8th. So the pitching kept the team in the game, and the offense just couldn't get anything going. So they would start out the series in Toronto with a loss, unfortunately. Luis Gil, even though the wheels never fell off completely despite allowing a ton of walks, would unfortunately take his first loss of the year, with Chris Bassett getting the win. Tuesday came around, and this game was also very frustrating because similarly to the first game, the Yankees did put up a run in the 2nd inning yet again. This time thanks to Jose Trevino on an RBI single that drove Stanton home. And then Carlos Rodon, who started the game obviously the day after Luis Gil, he showed some control issues as well. Only going 4 innings through way too many pitches in this outing. 4 walks, 5 strikeouts, but 5 hits, allowing 3 runs. Kept the ball in the ballpark, which he's had a little trouble doing at times, so that was a positive. And the velocity was still there, so you had your positives, but he threw way too many pitches. In the first 2 games of this series, it was a big theme that it was really hard to retire the Blue Jays. They were taking a lot of pitches. They were fouling off a lot of pitches. The Yankee pitchers had trouble putting them away with 2 strikes. And that resulted in a lot more work being done than was necessary. And that applied to Rodon here as well. Just didn't necessarily have the put-away stuff. He'd get them to 2 strikes, but he couldn't retire them. And it resulted in him having like 90 to 100 pitches by the time the 4th inning came around. Just threw way too many pitches, did not go deep enough. And this was a theme in the earlier part of the week. And it made people very worried about the bullpen. This is something that we've seen a decent amount of in the early season here. And this has been a con to the starting rotation. If you had to pick one earlier on here, it's been a bit of a theme. And not just with the Yankees, throughout the vast majority of the league, that they're just not going that deep into games oftentimes. And that's a bit of a problem. It'll fry up a bullpen real quick, especially if you're on a streak of days in a row where you have no off days in sight, like the Yankees actually currently are right now. Speaking of that, I'll mention that later on again when we talk about what's ahead to follow the Rays series that just wrapped up. But regardless, sticking to this one, Rodon just did not go deep enough, threw way too many pitches. Luke Weaver came in, allowed 2 more on top of that. And with the offense not doing much at all while this was all going on, it was just a tough watch. Now, the offense would add on runs later, 2 in the top of the 7th and 1 more in the top of the 9th, all on RBI groundouts or sac flies pretty much. You had 2 RBI groundouts by Trevino and 1 sac fly by Oswaldo. And those were all 4 runs, but with the 5 runs that were put up on the board by the Blue Jays, obviously 4 was not enough. The Yankees couldn't get that big hit that would really get them truly back into the game and give them a legitimate chance of winning. And Rodon just didn't go deep enough, and it just cascaded a little bit from there. So the Yankees would take a 5-4 loss there. Rodon taking the loss on the night, of course, and Kikuchi again just baffling the offense like he did at Yankee Stadium as well. Yankees just can't seem to figure him out. But then Wednesday, like I said, running counter to how the Guardian series went. It's pretty funny. How the first 2 the Yankees won, and the last one was a crazy self-inflicted loss by the Yankees to end the series. Well, now the first 2 were bad for the Yankees in this series, and the third one was a crazy win to end it. So that was good. Starting this one was Mr. Marcus Stroman, and he's looked better, but he also was not bad by any means at all. 5 1/3 innings, so he made it at least into the 6th, giving his usual decent length. He's usually good for at least 6, but this one just a couple of outs off of that. So still really not too many complaints here with Marcus Stroman. 6 hits, did give up a bit amount of hits. 2 runs, both earned, 2 walks, and 2 strikeouts. So the strikeouts were down, and he did give up the home run to Dalton Varsho in the bottom of the 2nd. That was really the only legitimate blemish off of him. He probably threw a few too many pitches as well for himself with the usual good pace that he has, but any other trouble that he happened to have gotten in, he got out of, and he still put together a plenty respectable start, and I was hoping at some point the offense would bounce back for him. Fortunately, they did, as we know, but that was his final line. He would get a no decision on the day, of course. Caleb Ferguson would allow 2 runs in the next inning to follow that he pitched, and I got a lot to say about Caleb Ferguson once we're all done with this. But this was just the start of what was a really bad week for him. Ian Hamilton pitched a scoreless frame. Victor Gonzalez got an out himself. He would end up getting the win because the Yankees would score most immediately after he was done pitching, and Clay Holmes would end up getting his 7th save of the year, of course. But the offense, the late game comeback is what everybody was talking about with this game. That was the real story. Otherwise, totally offensively, while Stroman was actually in the game, the only real run they scored for him was Juan Soto hitting an RBI double, of course. Then it came to the late game comeback. Started off by none other than Mr. Juan Soto as well, ironically enough. Who saw that coming? So, top of the 8th, down 4-1. Seemed like the Yankees were really about to be ready to get swept, let alone lose their first series, but also get swept for the first time. But Juan Soto, in the top of the 8th, started to allude to something potentially different by hitting a solo shot to right center field, absolute missile right into the seats in Rogers Center, made it 4-2. Then in the top of the ninth, now, in an attempt to close this game out, very interesting decision by the Blue Jays here. Even if Romano wasn't available, they decided to go with Eric Swanson, who had just returned from injury. He was out for some time, and they decided that in a close save situation, this would be a good opportunity to bring him back and get him some work. It did not work out that way at all. Starting off the inning right away with an absolute tank job into the left field seats was Giancarlo Stanton. Made it 4-3, and then the offense after that just really started to get some solid traffic on the bases, and they made it worth their while ultimately. Gleyber Torres with a single right after that. Verdugo with a double, so it was second and third with nobody out. And then Oswaldo Cabrera, unfortunately, grounded a ball to IKF. Good old friend IKF at second base. Did not drive in a run. But then Jose Trevino with an RBI single tied the game at 4. And then, after a Volpe pop-out and a Juan Soto walk to hand the bat to Aaron Judge in a big situation, again, what we were talking about, people nonsensically actually complaining that Juan Soto did this a couple of weeks ago or so, walking instead of forcing a hit, even on pitches that may not even be strikes, and expanding his strike zone by doing so, which he rarely does in the first place. Well, to prove my point about how absurd that line of thinking is, that I went on a whole rant about last week, Aaron Judge and Juan Soto made me and a lot of other people with just pure common sense look very good with this outcome, because in this particular case, even though this was a very rare occurrence as of this past week, especially in big moments, audio again in courtesy of the S Network, Aaron Judge did this.
And the pitch. Grounded, fair, inside third, kicks off the sidewall. 1 run scores, 2 run score. The hold Soto at third. It's a big 2-run single for Aaron Judge. And the Yankees have come all the way back to lead 6-4.
How about that, huh? So it worked out that time. Hell of a comeback for the Yankees, down by 2 going into the top of the ninth. They pull off the comeback and get their crazy series-ending victory, managed to salvage one in Toronto in what was an otherwise really tough series, other than the top of the ninth inning of Game 3. And after a home save, the Yankees wrapped it up in Toronto. They did lose their first series of the season, but they left on a high note, went into the off day. That's exactly how I would have drawn it up, other than, of course, winning the series and or even possibly sweeping. But otherwise, it's always good to end it good going into an off day, traveling back home. Thursday off, Friday, they would come back home to greet the Tampa Bay Rays. And this series had also a bit of a crazy start to it. It's pretty boring the first half of the game. No runs scored at all. No action whatsoever. Clark Schmidt was out there starting for the Yankees. And for the Rays was none other than Tyler Alexander, who basically was having me pull my hair out the entire day. Because Tyler Alexander came in with an ERA in the 6s, a soft-throwing, left-handed pitcher. Yankees lineup is very balanced, but they have a lot of devastating right-handed hitters as well. And they were just doing nothing. The offense was maddening until later on in the game for the Yankees in this one. Maddening. Except for the 7th inning. But the Rays had taken the lead at first off of Clark Schmidt, who I could not even be mad at, because he had actually made it into the 6th inning. It looked like as if he was going to actually pitch a full 6, which would have been very nice. But nonetheless, it was still quite a great start for Clark Schmidt. 5 1/3. Did give up 7 hits, but only 1 run on the solo shot that he would give up. No walks at all, and struck out 7. So, all in all, not a bad start at all for Clark Schmidt. Only run he did give up was that Richie Palacios solo shot in the top of the 6th. So I couldn't be mad at him. The offense just completely let him hang out there to dry. Just did nothing for him. But then in the bottom of the 7th, fortunately, even if it was partially thanks to some crappy Rays defense, things finally started to get cooking for the Yankees offense. On an error by Yandy Diaz over at first base, Oswaldo Cabrera drove home Alex Verdugo to tie the game at 1 as they finally broke through. Then after that, Anthony Volpe, one of very few hits he had this past week, especially in the Rays series, which he looked really bad this weekend especially. But he got an RBI single, nice little looper into left center field, put the Yankees ahead 2-1. And then right after him, obviously, our beloved, glorious, beautiful number 2 hitter, our generational talent, stepped up to the plate. And, well, why don't you listen for yourself?
Drilled deep to right field. There it goes. See ya. A long home run for the amazing Soto. And the Yankees lead 5-1.
That place was so loud. Oh my God, I would have loved to have been there. Yankee Stadium was rocking for this home run. Oswaldo and Volpe on base, and 450 some odd feet later, deep into the second deck in right field, Soto just launches one to the freaking moon, putting the Yankees up 5-1. All the action happening in the 7th inning, with a fairly commanding 5-1 lead after they were looking dead for the vast majority of the game. Very fun inning there. Very, very fun. And then off of Ian Hamilton, he actually had a very bad 8th inning. The Rays crept back a little bit, scoring 2 runs off of Ian in the top of the 8th, making it 5-3. And then Clay Holmes gave us our usual heart attack in the 9th inning, as always a little bit, because he just has to. He cannot help himself. I even tweeted, are we ever going to get I was like, listen, Clay, you have the most saves in baseball. You still have a 0 ERA. It's great stuff, honestly. All good, but can we ever get a stressless 1, 2, 3 inning out of you? Ever. Because it just seems like an impossibility, but with Richie Palacios, he and Caballero, who were really 2 pests this weekend. Palacios was at the plate against Clay Holmes. I was having a heart attack, and he just happened to hit a line drive to Volpe, who then flipped the ball to Gleyber Torres at second to double up Jose Siri. And after all that, the Yankees clinched the victory 5-3, with Clay Holmes earning his 8th save of the year. Yesterday, with the day of John Sterling having happened, unfortunately, the offense was completely dead. Completely. Yesterday was genuinely a pitiful showing. Other than Juan Soto, who went 2 for 4, accounting for half the Yankee hits because they only had 4 on the whole day, 1 by Rizzo and 1 by Verdugo. Shame on the offense yesterday. They did nothing. And what made it even more criminal was the fact of how much they let down Nestor Cortez, who has had his inconsistency issues early on this year. But this was the positive side of that. And I would even call this a better start than the Miami start, even if he went 1 inning deeper in that one, because the Rays are a far better team, obviously, than the Marlins, so 1 inning less does not make a difference to me as far as evaluating which start is better. But because of the obviously more talented offense of the Rays and overall more talented team of the Rays, even with an inning less on his line, I'm saying that this is the best start from Nestor so far. May have given up 6 hits, 7 innings, but no runs, shutout, no walks, and struck out 9. So even though strikeouts so far this season have been down, they were definitely up in this game. More than a strikeout per inning he averaged. Got his ERA down nicely from what it was before, down to a much better 3.41 from what it was prior. Luke Weaver and Clay Holmes pitched well also, so the pitching was really solid in this game. It really, really was, and the offense just was not there, nowhere to be found. And this is where I'm going to capitalize on what I said before on what has been an awful week for Caleb Ferguson. And overall has just not looked too sharp in a Yankee uniform so far. I was happy when they had gotten him, but early on here, he has had his better outings, but for the most part, especially recently, I'm not liking what I'm seeing out of Ferguson, guys. I got to be honest with you. Too many pitches just served up right down the plate, and he does not throw hard enough to justify that. Usually throws 94, maybe 95, with a cutter being even slower. And I don't like how his slider breaks, or I guess doesn't break as much as it should. It oftentimes just goes up there as Jeff Nelson has called it on the broadcast a number of times, a cement mixer, something that's spinning but just does not really have much movement to it. And he got clubbed in extra innings in the top of the 10th. Again, now shame on the Yankee offense for not putting up any runs even in the bottom of the 10th with the ghost runner, but still, Ferguson, the way he pitched in the 10th inning is just inexcusable, and we've seen it a few too many times, especially of late. Just the fastball is being served up, even on 0-2 counts. Just giving the hitters pitches that are way too hittable. And he just did a brutal job, to be honest with you. Even his outs are very hard hit sometimes. And he's got to figure it out. But for now, with how bad he has looked of late, Aaron Boone, and I know it's gotten tough with the Yankee bullpen because of how much they've had to be used, how many injuries they have out there. But right now, you cannot be putting Caleb Ferguson in any major situations as of this moment. Because between Toronto, between that last game against the Guardians, between this, just in the last week alone, this guy's got to have some time away from big moments. Because he just has not been it. He really has not been. The cutter is just not good. The fastball is being just served up there as a cookie to the hitters. And the slider's just been bad. Especially to righties, it's been easy. He even gave up a freaking hit to left-handed hitting, brutal offensive catcher Ben Rortvedt as one of the 2 runs in the top of the 10th. So enough is enough with Caleb Ferguson in big moments for now. Have him do mop-up for a while and then maybe try it again. But Ferguson, as of now, alongside the putrid offense yesterday, very annoying game with what should have been a fun celebratory day. And it was beforehand. But you would have liked for them to get the win after all that as well. It would have been quite nice, but they did not. Fortunately, today, it was a nice bounce back. And it ended the series on a high note, with the Yankees getting back to their series winning ways after their first series loss in Toronto. Luis Gil got back on the mound. We were all hoping for some better control today, and while there was still a couple of focus and mental and control mistakes in today's game, definitely a vast improvement from Gil over the last one. He looked very good today. Kind of wish he just fought through and got that last out of the 6th inning and completed 6 full, because that would have been real nice, but still, nonetheless, looked plenty fine. 5 2/3, only 2 hits given up. 1 run was not earned, but it was his fault nonetheless. I'll explain why in case you don't remember for yourself or you missed the game. 3 walks, so the walks were still there a little bit, but still better control this time around. 9 strikeouts. So even if throughout this season so far he's averaging nearly a walk an inning, which is not good, the strikeouts are just wild, which we all knew he would get because he's always been a high strikeout guy because his stuff is electric. He has great stuff. That has never been the problem. We've always cited that. But it's been pretty crazy so far. 19 2/3 innings pitched so far. He's got 29 strikeouts. That's very good. But also in 19 2/3 innings pitched, he's given up 17 walks. So again, almost a walk an inning. That's not good. But the strikeout rate is sick. And the ERA is at 2.75. So he's kept teams off the scoreboard well. But there have been starts where he's not gone deep enough. He's thrown too many pitches. The control isn't necessarily there, like the one prior to this with 7 walks. That's just not going to do. So, again, this start, much better, but the reason the 1 run scored was totally on him because when checking on a runner at second in the top of the 3rd, he had thrown the ball into center field. And then, this is Caballero, the runner, by the way, again, a pest. But he was dancing off third base when Gil was just 1 strikeout away from getting out of the 3rd inning, scoreless. Caballero on 3rd, 2 outs, 1 strike away from getting out of the inning. Caballero's dancing down 3rd, trying to distract Luis Gil, maybe even try to draw a balk, and he actually did just that. Because Luis Gil stepped off, or didn't step off, I guess, in a very weird way, called for the balk, and because of the throw into center field, the errant throw into center field, and then just a stupid lack of focus mistake resulting in a balk, he just had driven in the run all by himself. So it was totally his own fault, but because of the mistakes, it was still deemed an unearned run, of course. So, but again, overall, I don't want that to damper what was otherwise a very nice day for Luis Gil. Did lose his command at the end with 2 walks in a row. That was 2 of the 3 walks. So otherwise, he had only allowed 1 walk up until the very end of his start. So again, much better today. The stuff was fantastic. And definitely a good build off the last start. Good bounce back. Luke Weaver pitched an inning and a 3rd as well, even though Luke Weaver's been really ticking me off lately, giving up runs in big moments. Even completely dropped the ball on an underhanded flip by Rizzo at first base today. But still, scoreless inning. Didn't allow any runs, thankfully. Dennis Santana did. Top of the 8th. Dennis Santana. He was a mess today. His slider was terrible. You want to talk about a cement mixer. Thing was not moving at all. So he gave up 3 runs, damn near allowed the Rays to get right back into it, but he held them at 4, and Victor Gonzalez, unbelievably and excitingly so, closed out the game for his second save of the year in the top of the 9th, because Clay Holmes had pitched 2 days in a row prior, as we know, so he was not available. Victor Gonzalez against all right-handed hitters, being a lefty pitcher. Not very favorable, and I was nervous. More concerned as to why they weren't going with Ian Hamilton at the time, and Michael Kay was even asking the same question on the broadcast. But nonetheless, Victor got it done, and excitingly so, on a ball that was deflected off him, and he had to run forward and flip to Rizzo at first base for the final out. But he got the job done, and the Yankees took the series from the Rays. All pitching again, other than Santana, looked solid. And as far as the offense, they had gotten off to it right away in the bottom of the first, an early run by the Yankees. Did my eyes deceive me today? And again by Anthony Rizzo. Not a pop-up, I know. RBI single driving home Juan Soto. Shocker there that he was on base with the clip that he's getting on base so far. That made it 1-0. Then obviously the balk tied the game at 1. But then in the bottom of the 5th, Alex Verdugo, that dog, 2-run single, put them ahead 3-1 off of Aaron Savali. I was wondering they were going to get to him, and they finally did it here. They just went nuts. Finally, the Yankee offense had woken up. Trevino added on after that with an RBI single. Oswaldo added on with an RBI single. And then after Dennis Santana made them creep back a little bit, 5-4 was your final. Yankees take the series. They're 15-7, which is still currently right now amongst the best records in baseball. Right now, the Guardians are 16-6, so slightly better. That's the only better record in the American League, with the Orioles just trailing a half a game behind that, 14-7. And nobody has a better record than the Yankees in the National League either. So really the only team better than them as of right now headed into Monday is the Cleveland Guardians by just 1 game, pretty much. So not a big deal, and nobody's really paying too much attention to the standings in April, nor should they. So that's the deal, but it's been nice that the Yankees have been in first place this entire time. Certainly no complaints there. What's ahead for this coming week? Tomorrow, Monday the 22nd, it continues with the Yankees still being in the Bronx, welcoming the A's in. Now, what's baffling about this is that for some reasons that escape me, it's a day game tomorrow. No clue why. Highly unusual. What Major League Baseball has been doing with the scheduling lately, I just have no idea. But this is a 1:05 game tomorrow. 1:05 Eastern, afternoon Monday game. Carlos Rodon will be taking the mound. Hopefully he'll go deeper into the game this time because 4 innings just does not cut it. But he'll be taking on Sears, J.P. Sears, familiar face, former Yankee. So that's the matchup for tomorrow. I'll have to tune in from work. Tuesday, the 23rd, 7:05 Eastern in the Bronx, Yankees and A's again. Stroman against Blackburn. And then Wednesday, the third game of the series, 7:05 Eastern again. And this pitching match will be Clark Schmidt, and he'll be taking on for the A's, Joe Boyle. And then on Thursday, which will wrap up the 4-game set against the A's, 7:05 again, Nestor Cortez will be taking on Alex Wood. And that's the A's series that's coming up. No days off this week. We were talking about that before. And then on Friday, the Yankees hit the road again for what will be a very competitive series in Milwaukee. First game will be at 8:10 Eastern. No pitching matchups announced for this game or any of the rest in the series for now, obviously. But again, first night Milwaukee, 8:10 p.m. Eastern. 7:10 p.m. Eastern on Saturday the 27th, Yankees and Brewers again in Milwaukee. And then finally, to end the 3-game set next weekend, on Sunday the 28th, when we will be yapping again. That game will be at 2:10 Eastern. So this week is the continuation, after this weekend against the Rays, of the Yankees having no days off. I actually just realized this yesterday. The Yankees' next off day is May 6th. I just, again, another thing about the scheduling, I don't understand. Especially with the epidemic of pitching injuries out there and starters not going as deep and the bullpens just frying their arms, especially in the Yankees' case. I mean, fortunately, this weekend it wasn't that bad with the lack of length. Not as bad as usual. Hopefully that keeps up, because otherwise the bullpen's just going to continue to fall apart here, injury-wise especially, probably. But My God, all those days in a row. The Yankees are going to have to dig deep to figure this one out and just get through it. Because, my God, May 6th, starting this past Friday, April 19th, all the way to May 6th, no off days. That's legit almost 3 weeks straight of baseball. That's crazy. So, just thought I'd point that out, but a lot of baseball to go for the Yankees before their next off day. I mean, selfishly, it's very nice we get baseball every day as the fans, but my God, you need some off days here and there. Good Lord. So that's what's ahead, guys. Now, to finish off the show, as always, let's head on over to the social media segment. Today I'm switching up a little bit. No open-ended question because so much happened this past week. John Sterling, the mixed bag of everything that we've all gone through so far. I figured instead of just doing a specific open-ended question, I was going to put a question out about Aaron Judge since that's a high point of discussion these days. But especially because the series ended off on a high note today, I wanted to switch gears and just open up the discussion for anybody. So because of that, I decided to do a Q&A today. A question and answer. You give me the questions, I answer it. So let's get that started. I'll read through a few questions today, see what's on some of your guys' minds, and I'll try to get through as many as I can, as I usually do when I do this. Let's begin with @YankeeKen, and they ask, what's the biggest problem right now in this team? It's a good question. Well, listen, they are 15-7, and still in good shape, at least record-wise, so... And they've also won all series other than one. So it's important to keep that in perspective as well. But if I had to pick biggest problem, I'd definitely say Aaron Judge having yet to hit his true stride yet is a big problem. But also the inconsistency of the offense, I would say, has been pretty weird as of this past week. But also, they've had plenty of times where the starters just don't go deep enough into starts, and that just kind of has a domino effect with the bullpen and everything. So I could pick a couple of things, I guess. Right now, the biggest problem on the team, it's tough. I could pick a couple of things. Actually, you know what I'm going to pick? I'm going to pick the fact that the bullpen seems to be running lower and lower on depth as injuries continue to happen, and also... when starters don't go deep enough into games, the bullpen concerns me a little bit because they have to eat up more innings and they have less reliable arms to do so. So I'd say involving the bullpen, believe it or not, which is usually not a concern of mine, and they still haven't done absolutely awful, per se. But the more injuries that happen, the more concern I have. But also the inconsistency of the bats recently, and Judge in particular, have been... problems here and there, especially as of this last week. So it's tough. That's a tough question. I'll go with the depth of the bullpen as of right now. That's what I'll go with. But there are definitely a couple of different options you could choose from with that. @Ant9No says, any idea why they're playing a day game tomorrow? No. I have no idea. If you want me to just be really honest with you, and I don't have a good answer for you. I'm sorry. Baffling to me, too. @Laura_Eismont, my good friend Laura says, which player has been the most surprising to you? It could be in a good or a bad way. Good, it's got to be Oswaldo. Just has to be. Because Soto is obviously like God tier, but most of me expected that because I know how freaking amazing he is. But Oswaldo's definitely been the biggest positive surprise. The biggest negative surprise, it's got to be how Judge has started out, unfortunately. That's going to have to go with that. So I hope those are acceptable answers, Laura, but that's my take on it. @Matthew540-27550 asks, will all American League East teams finish above 500 this year? Is it the toughest division in Major League Baseball? I don't know all above 500. Last year was pretty damn close to that happening. The only thing stopping that was the Red Sox. And for a while, very close to the end, all 5 teams were over 500. So it almost happened last year. I think it's possible that it could at least come close to happening again this year. I don't know if it'll actually happen. For now, I'll say no, that it won't happen. But if it won't happen, it'll probably only be because of one team again, whether it be the Red Sox or somebody else. But all 5 teams are competitive They can all make a run, and they're all very close to each other right now. And is it the toughest division in Major League Baseball? Of course it is. It has been for a long time. And anybody else who's looking to deny that, they're just crazy. Because I'm sorry, the American League Central has never done anything for me. I think that division is an utter joke. I mean, right now you have both the Guardians and the Royals looking pretty good, especially the Guardians, but that'll taper off eventually to the point where one team will far and away go away with it, and the rest will be either mid or terrible. The American League West will sometimes be pretty solid, but they don't blow me away usually. The NL East is usually a team or two, and then it just completely falls off after that. Same sort of thing with the NL Central. Usually one team runs away with it with maybe a second contending, and that's really it. Usually has a sharp bottom to it. And the NL West, I mean, come on. It's got some pretty good competition, but it's always the Dodgers going away with it. Come on. There's just not as much competition. Whereas in the American League East, there are many seasons where they will have like 4 teams, at least 3, making a run for it. But last year, up until close to the end, it was close amongst all 5, like I even just mentioned before. Until decently close to the end, all the teams were over 500. Where else do you see that in any other baseball division? Or have that even coming close to happening? Nowhere. It's by far the toughest division in baseball. I don't want to hear any commentary, debate, argument. I don't even want to hear it. There are people who still claim that it's not. I don't know how you could say that. The American League East is definitely the best division in baseball, most competitive, for sure. I will die on that hill until it goes otherwise. All right, next we have at Steve Zim16. Steve asks, why is the Yankees bullpen full of a bunch of Albert Abreu clones? That's funny. That's funny. Wow. That really caught me off guard. Honestly, it's definitely partially thanks to the injuries, at least. Because they have a lot of guys down due to injury. Most recently, even Nick Birdie. And you have guys like Efros who have been down forever. Canley's out now. Loizaga's out. They have so many arms that are down from injury that could really help out. And I think it's resulted in them having quite a few guys who just throw hard and have control issues, or just, I mean, the depth just isn't great. Like, you have Cody Morris out there right now as an option after Nick Birdie went down. It's not great. But you still have guys like Hamilton and Holmes. That's the positive, I guess. And Santana, for the most part, other than today, has looked good. Like, his slider's usually good, but today was just a cement mixer. Victor Gonzalez has done a pretty nice job, much better than I thought he would do. Weaver has been underwhelming to me at times. So, I mean, it's a mix. It's weird. The bullpen's in a weird spot right now, guys. It's really weird. But yeah, Albert Abreu. Oh my God. I don't miss him, like, at all. I don't think you understand. I don't miss Albert Abreu even a little bit. Oh my gosh. But yeah, the bullpen is in a weird place right now. Very odd. And I don't know if they want him to just be more of a starter role or anything, but they had put him in a reliever role to throw 3 pitches early on in the season when he made the 40-man roster and even the 26-man. But I'm just wondering where Clayton Beater even is right now. I'm still wondering where that man is. Just wasting away in the minors. I'd rather him up here rather than Ron Marinaccio. So again, yeah, the bullpen's just odd right now. You have Ian Hamilton and Clay Holmes primarily, but you have Canley down, you have Birdie down, you have Efros down, you have Trevino down. Caleb Ferguson is just bad so far. And I've mentioned many of the others. I don't know. Just, it's in a weird spot right now. They need guys to come back from injury out there. Bullpen needs a little bit of help. All right, I just realized how late the show is going yet again, so I'm actually going to only read about 2 or 3 more. I'm going to go on the home stretch of my usual replies here. Next week, we'll bounce back even harder with the social media segment, try to leave myself more time to do it, and maybe possibly go back to an open-ended question. I also happened to post this social media segment very late today. I didn't post it until after the game ended, which was only a couple hours before I started recording, so I didn't leave too much time for people to reply as well, a bit later than usual this weekend. So I'll do a better job next weekend, I promise. But still, some pretty good questions in this segment here. We'll do the final usual two. Actually, I did realize that, like last week's episode, my mom's boyfriend Jack actually replied again, so I'll do him as well. Read his reply alongside the usual final two. First up, as always, is my girlfriend at Vic Salimo, and she asks, what do you think Judge needs to do to find his groove again, and do you think Rizzo is starting to age out, and why? Good questions. Judge, honestly, he's just got to keep, as much as I hate to say it, he's got to keep getting reps. But the one thing I will say this, especially because tomorrow's a day game. Super weird on a Monday. Random Monday that has no significance whatsoever. But I will say this. I do think that Aaron Judge should get a day off in this upcoming A's series, especially because it's a 4-game series anyway. But do it for the day game tomorrow, I guess. Just get the day off over with and have the next 3. Usually I'd expect tomorrow to be a night game and then Thursday maybe to be a day game, but I don't know why they're doing it this way. In any event, because it's the day game tomorrow, and just to get it out of the way, after a rough weekend for him, just give him a day off tomorrow, clear his head, mental break, and then after that, you just got to keep giving him reps. He's got to go out there, keep seeing live pitches, keep getting at-bats, getting reps, and just figure it out. He's got to get the timing right, and right now, like I said, it just doesn't appear to me that he's even seeing the ball because of the pitches he's swinging at, not having good discipline, even decreasing on the walks that he did have to hang his hat on before when he was still not doing much hits-wise. Now he doesn't even have that. That baseball is definitely looking like a bottle cap to him nowadays, as opposed to a beach ball when someone's really hot. So, just after a day off, which I think he should get at least once in this upcoming A's series, just give him a day off, and he's got to keep getting reps. Level out the swing. Be smarter with the pitches that you're taking as opposed to the ones that you're choosing to swing at. Try to pick up the spin on the ball to try to lay off those bad breaking balls, and stop taking the pitches that you usually crush. And instead of wasting the ones he usually crush as well, the ones he's fouling off, that's all about the timing right there. That's about timing. But his eye isn't good right now either, even though the walks have gone down. So he's got work to do. Take at least a day off in this A's series and just keep getting reps. That's my advice. He'll figure it out. He will. It is time to get going, though. Rizzo's starting to age out. I mean, there's definitely reason to think that he is, because not only is the offense taking a hit, and they're claiming he's completely healthy, even after all the concussion stuff from last year, but like I said before, the thing that's really startling to me and standing out to me big time is the fact that his defense, which has never even been an iota of a problem in the past, it's only ever been an extreme positive. His defense has been awful to start. And yes, it is early. There's still so much season left to go. But as of right now, there are a few startling things that are jumping out to me in a very bad way about Rizzo, about how he's looking, how he's playing, his cognitive reactions to things. I don't know. He seems to be slowing down. And if that is the case, then that doesn't bode well for his future on the Yankees, because as we know, based off of his contract, the one that he signed heading into 2023, he had last year, of course, and now he has this year. 2025 is a club option. So it's entirely possible that option might not be picked up for next year for a potential third year on the 2-year contract. And if he keeps playing like this, if this happens to span for the vast majority of the season, and he looks bad and there are signs of him really regressing and possibly even being washed up, this will be Rizzo's last year. It definitely will be. Because if there are better options to be had, then the Yankees will go after them. I know that there's a deep attachment to Rizzo there, and he's very popular with the guys. He's gotten to be very close with certain guys, especially like Aaron Judge, and even Gleyber Torres and others, but there are signs that definitely show that age might be catching up to him a little bit now. I don't know what it is, if he's still feeling lingering effects that they have not been upfront about from last year, or if it's just the age catching up, but there are a few things that are jumping out at me mechanically and defensively. Not liking it. Things that were never really a problem with Rizzo in the past. It does not have me feeling good here, but that's basically my 2 cents on that. Next we'll do my mom's boyfriend, Jack. And Jack says, being a Mets fan, yeah, I know, guys. But being a Mets fan and being with your mom, you, and your brother being such huge Yankee fans, it's not hard to comment on these things. It's all good. The Yankees are playing well. The only question I would have is Judge. Do you think Judge will get his swing back? Yeah, listen, I think Judge is going to figure it out. I'm not so worried about the fact that he will figure it out. I'm just worried about when the hell he's finally going to figure it out. Because some people have already given up on Judge. I mean, people are being really harsh towards him. I mean, he was getting booed the other day. And while I definitely would not boo him, I do appreciate how he's talking about it. He's being very Stanton-like with that. They asked him about how you feel about the boos, and he's like, oh, listen, I would boo me too in that situation. Listen, I appreciate that. A lot of these New York athletes know how it goes here. You got to know what you're getting into when you come here. When you're doing great, you are definitely going to hear it. When you do badly, you are definitely going to hear it. It's the extreme of both sides. That's how this town is. So he understands. He gets how it works. And he's ready for it. And he agrees with it. Very upfront like Stanton is. I appreciate when the players handle it like that. That's just how it goes. Judge gets that. And I do think with more reps, maybe even a day off to clear his head because he's been in that lineup virtually every day. So give him a mental day and go from there. Just keep getting his reps, get his timing down. And that's that, because if it is a timing issue going back to the time that he missed in spring training, that would just mean that he just needs to keep getting reps. So I do think that he's going to be fine. I do. I still think that it's going to take a lot for me to think otherwise. I still believe in my boy here. But there's no doubt that even though the Yankees are still in a good place right now, unbelievably without him hitting full stride, or much of any stride, they still need him to get going. They do. He's still the captain. Got to get him going. Last but not least is my mom, Julie Gina Scudero. She says, my question is, are you as concerned as I am about the fact that before today's game, Judge struck out 6 times? This appears to be more than just a slump. It saddens me to hear the silence when he's up at bat. I want him back to the glory he deserves. He knows how heavy the burden is to carry, being the best hitter on the team in the past. I hope he gets his groove back very soon. He looks totally lost. Love you, Judge. Let's go, Yankees. Thanks, Mike. Well, thank you, Mom. I completely agree with virtually everything. It is pretty funny. Judge having known what the full burden is. I mean, without the 62 home run 2022 season, it's quite possible the Yankees don't even make the playoffs in many sorts of places. Who knows? Or maybe they don't at least finish in the position that they did and go in with a lesser position in the bracket going into the playoffs. I mean, many things are possible. It was literally reliant on him. And we saw last year, even though a lot of things went wrong last year other than Judge getting hurt, but we saw how much harder the team collapsed, even more so as soon as he got hurt. We know how vital he is to this team, hence why he was named captain, aside from his just general talent also. But we know how talented he is. We know how talented he could be. We know how talented he has been. And it's just crazy that, now he finally gets to have a team where he doesn't have to do it all anymore. But he's not just not doing it all. He's not doing much of anything. That's the problem. That's where that needs to change. He doesn't have to do absolutely everything, but he is the captain. He should be a leader still, too. Soto is the one doing absolutely everything right now. With dashes of Oswaldo Cabrera, of course, and before his recent slump, Anthony Volpe. And occasional offensive contributions around the lineup here and there. But primarily those three. Judge has done very little. And he does look lost. He does. I hate to watch it. Judge is my favorite. I have absolute misery watching him play this way. Hate it. But yeah, coming into today, that was 6 strikeouts in a row at one point. He looks amongst the worst that I have ever seen him. He really, really does. And there is a lot of quietness when he comes up. People still cheer for him when he steps up occasionally, but then there's a lot of silence. People not really expecting much of him, which runs majorly counter to just about any point of the past, pretty much. It's just pretty crazy, but I'm still confident he's going to figure it out. Still think so. I think he will get into that groove. And again, fortunately, on an overall record basis, the Yankees still find themselves in a pretty solid place, to say the least. Still winning all series but one. Perhaps this is him getting it all out of his system right now as opposed to later, which if there is a time, well, now is the time to do it while the Yankees are doing well, and you hope he picks it up later on. But other than possibly taking that mental day going forward, just keep giving him reps. That's all you could do. I am concerned because the Yankees, at some point, do need their captain to get going, but long term, I still do think that he will be fine. So there's a ceiling to my concern, even though there is concern there. Hope that answers your question, Mom. But thank you for your question. Thank you all for all of your questions. I promise we will do even more so of a social media segment with more participating next week when I give more time for people to answer and give myself more time to read out more replies and interact even more so. But just keep on trying each week, guys. You know the deal. But as of now, that is all, my friends, for episode 217 of the Yapping Yankees podcast. Just a few of the usual reminders before wrapping up here today. Remember to follow me on all social medias, guys, if you do not already. Facebook fan page, Mike Scudero NY. My Twitter, or X, is at Mike Scudero. And my Instagram is Mike Scuds97. Subscribe to Yapping Yankees on all 4 of the platforms it is available on: YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and SoundCloud. Show your love across all 4 of them like you all always do such a great job at doing already. My friends, just follow along closely on all 4. And if you've missed any Yapping Yankees episodes, well, as always, episodes 34 all the way up to today's episode 217, are available on YouTube. And every single Yapping Yankees episode, going all the way back to episode 1, almost 5 years ago now, all the way up to today's episode, those are all available on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. But once again, I thank you 3,000 for listening to me yap today. As always, my friends, I have been your host, Mike Scudero, and we shall yap again next Sunday, April 28th, when I come at you with episode 218 of Yapping Yankees. But until then, guys, hang in there, be patient, please stay safe, look out for your loved ones. Go ahead and kick life's ass this week, as I always tell you to do every single week, my friends. And once more, I just want to wish a very happy and well-deserved retirement to Mr. John Sterling. He said it himself, after so many years, he is tired, he will not miss being on the air, and you know what? He more than deserves it, and I hope he enjoys his retirement, does all the things he likes to do, and spends all the time in the world with his family, because the Lord knows he's earned it. Otherwise, when it comes to the Yankees, let's just hope, is what I keep on saying all the time, that they keep on taking series. You know, I was thinking, it figures that they lose a series right after I come out with an episode last week saying just keep winning series. They immediately go on to lose one in Toronto. Can't make it up. Yeah, thanks. Just what I need, people laughing at me to end the episode. All right, guys. Until next Sunday, plenty more time to yap then. Take care, and let's go Yanks.